Hey, hey. Yeah.
Could you please take your seats? Thank you very much. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome all of you here to our fourth Energy Infrastructure Forum in Copenhagen, the sunniest place in Europe, at least for today. When I look around, I can see that this room is filled, and your presence here confirms another time the interest and also the commitment that exists towards this forum. And this forum is there to debate all relevant issues related to our infrastructure, energy infrastructure policy. Today's discussion, we will focus on a very, very important and timely issue, and that is the digital transformation of our energy grid. But it is already a tradition, I have to say, that before we go into the work, we have the pleasure to hear some keynotes for opening the forum, and firstly by Commissioner for Energy and Climate, Miguel Arias Cañete, and followed by the Minister for Energy, Utilities and Climate here in Denmark, Mr. Lars Christian Lilleholt. And then I have also the pleasure to welcome today a representative from the European Parliament. It is the co-chair of the ITRE Committee of the European Parliament, Morten Helvig Petersen. But first I would like to give the floor to the Commissioner, Arias Cañete, for his keynote. Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Ministers, members of the European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to welcome you to the fourth Energy Infrastructure Forum, together with Minister Lilleholt, our yearly host and partner for this event, which has established itself as a reliable stakeholder platform for energy infrastructure policy discussions. We come together every year to discuss the most pressing issues which define and shape the future of our networks. Since the last time we met in Copenhagen, we have achieved a number of important milestones in the energy and climate policy. The Clean Energy for All European package is now in a decisive moment, and its adoption will provide a stable legislative framework to facilitate our Paris Agreement commitments. Through our energy policy, we are establishing an updated legislative framework to facilitate the necessary public and private investment in the clean energy transition. The European Union is a front-runner in the implementation of the energy transition, for which it relies on its interconnected grid to deliver affordable, secure and sustainable energy for all Europeans. The development of our energy infrastructure should follow at the same speed in order to underpin this transformation. In November 2017, the Commission adopted a communication on strengthening Europe's energy networks, speeding up the completion of our network infrastructure. This communication accompanied the third Union list of projects of common interest. This new list includes 173 key energy infrastructure projects, out of which 110 are electricity and smart grid projects, 53 are gas projects, and for the first time, we have 4 carbon dioxide transportation projects. This list marks, as foreseen, a stronger shift towards electricity and CO2 infrastructures, underlining the strategic role of our TEN-E policy to support the energy transition with the necessary infrastructure. These projects together will help deliver the goals of the Energy Union to ensure affordable, secure and sustainable energy to all consumers. In particular, all the priority projects in the context of our regional initiatives are included in this list, and I am thinking of the projects necessary to synchronize the Baltic states' electricity grid with the European system, projects to reduce the isolation of the Iberian Peninsula, projects to increase energy security, but also renewables penetration in Central, East and Southeast Europe, and forward-looking projects to make an integrated offshore grid possible in the Northern and Baltic Seas. I use this occasion to thank all those who have supported this third list, all Member States, and a very robust majority of members of the European Parliament. From the Commission side, we have demonstrated the importance we attach to further strengthening the Connecting Europe facility also in the future. And I am therefore very satisfied that in the context of the multi-annual financial framework for the years 2020 to 2027, we have just proposed to increase the budget dedicated to energy within the Connection Europe facility by 80% to reach more than 8 billion euros. We will also continue after 2020 to further focus on electricity transmission infrastructure, smart grids and storage in order for the Connecting Europe facility to play a capital role in accelerating the low-carbon transition. An electricity system in which renewables will account for around half of the generation by 2030 and that will be fully decarbonized by 2050 brings a series of challenges ahead of us. The need to reinforce the electricity transmission and distribution grids, the need to embrace digitalization, smartening of the grids and deployment of new infrastructure solutions, and the need to absorb the impact of self-consumption. Innovation is the key to a seamless energy transition. Digitalization is relevant for the entire energy system and has a huge potential for increased efficiency in different parts of the system. Therefore, digitalization is a key enabler for low-carbon energy system. Digital transformation processes have an impact on the planning and development of the infrastructure and can reduce the need for capital expenditure for investments. Digitalization and smart grids allow for a more efficient use of existing infrastructure. Automation used to handle grid congestions and better planning of maintenance has the potential to increase efficiency and reduce costs. Transmission system operators have gradually been implementing digital elements in their transmission grids over the last decades. However, this development needs to grow exponentially over the next years. In particular, the interface between TSOs and DSOs has to be further reinforced, as well as the interlinkage between electricity, heat and gas infrastructures, and various forms of energy storage. Digitalization also implies handling of big amounts of data, and this brings new challenges in terms of cybersecurity and data handling, two areas that we have also covered in our Clean Energy for All European proposals, in particular under the new market design rules. And this brings me to a cornerstone of the Clean Energy Package for All Europeans, the empowerment of consumers. First and foremost, digitalization has to be put at the service of consumers, giving them a new opportunity and incentive to actively participate and benefit from the energy market. All consumers must have the possibility to participate as they wish, be it simply and swiftly, switching suppliers, spurring competition, or by offering the flexibility of their consumption, their appliances. Aggregators can further facilitate this process by collecting the flexibility from individual households. With the help of smart meters and the Internet of Things, consumers can gain by reducing their demand at time of peaks and consume or store energy when prices are lower. It is therefore more important than ever to harness the trust and participation of active and engaged consumers in this process. It is important to communicate in an open and transparent manner with consumers on these new opportunities. Likewise, an open dialogue with citizens is needed on the need for new energy infrastructures to enable the energy transition, including transmission grids. In this context, as is already a tradition for this forum, the Commission will again hand over the Renewable Grid Initiative Best Practice Award to 3 outstanding practices which showcase innovation, communication and environmental protection in project implementation and delivery. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, today and tomorrow we will look at ways to interlink both gas and electricity infrastructure, how to improve the implementation of our key energy projects, and ensure that the local communities share our vision for an integrated and interconnected European energy grid. I hope you will all have fruitful discussion during the 4th Energy Infrastructure Forum and build solutions which will be inspiring for tomorrow's energy system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And now I hand over the floor to our co-host of the Infrastructure Forum, Minister Lilleholt. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Keynote, for your speech. And thank you, Mr. Borchardt, for your introduction. Dear guests, I'm proud to be able to welcome you to Copenhagen and to the 4th Energy Infrastructure Forum. It's good to be here again, and I hope you will feel the same way. Last year, I talked about bringing the Energy Union to life. This process is still very much underway. A lot of work has been completed, but much is still to be done if we want a truly connected Europe. This forum is a great opportunity to meet and discuss new solutions, to share best practice, to learn from each other, to do better. And we need to all of that to keep making progress. This year, we are not just talking about energy. This year, we still talk about smart energy. We need to connect the digital world with the energy sector. This will unlock many benefits. This forum can motivate new projects that will help to connect Europe and give a helping hand to users. This year, we also talk more about connection, gas and power, for instance, power to gas technology. With more and more green power, power to gas, through gas, is important for energy systems of the future. This is just some of the many subjects and ideas for this year's forum. But we need many more new ideas. That is why we have this forum. That is why we invited you to Copenhagen. We need to keep talking together, and we need your ideas so the Energy Union can keep growing. A lot has been done, and I congratulated Commissioner Keynote on this. But the next Energy Commission should aim to further develop the Energy Union. Now is not time to rest. The energy sector will continue to develop and progress. Let me finish by congratulating the Copenhagen School of Infrastructure. I'm proud to inform you that the school has secured funding to deliver results. This will benefit forums to come, and I hope that a professor will be announced very soon. Finally, I simply wish you all a successful forum, and I hope to see you all again next year in Copenhagen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Lilleholt. And last but not least, as I said, the representatives from the Industry, Research and Energy Committee. And as you can see, the three words englobe already what we are discussing here. And I know that Mr. Peterson has a personal keen interest in these issues, and therefore we are very happy to have you here today. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borchardt, and thanks, Commissioner Keynote and Minister Lilleholt for remarks and for the invitation to be back here again. I'm happy to be here because obviously this forum allows legislators to engage in discussions with people that has experience in these important fields. As rapporteur of the ACER regulation, which we are negotiating right now, I can truly confirm that energy infrastructure is a very, very hot topic in Brussels and throughout Europe, and for very good reasons. As we all know, energy infrastructure is the very foundation for establishing a true internal market for energy, a market where energy can be traded freely across borders like any other good or service. But unfortunately, this is not the case in Europe today. Energy produced in one member state cannot always benefit consumers across borders. And therefore, we need to invest more in energy infrastructure for electricity. We need a change of direction. We need to prioritize electricity further than we've done already. We need investments also that respond to challenges of decentralization and digitalization, including the needs of small producers and active consumers. So my plea would be to further increase investments, not least in electricity infrastructure. And I welcome the new initiative from the minister, at least focusing on financing green energy investments. When it comes to financing, I think we also need to discuss how to better bundle also energy efficiency projects so that they can constitute infrastructure projects rather than narrow individual investments. Let me say that the issue of energy infrastructure is not only about expanding the capacity. We also have to ensure that we use existing capacity much better than we do today. In Europe today, on average, we use less than 50% of the available cross-border capacity in electricity. In some instances, less than even 20% of capacity is used, leading to bottlenecks across borders, costly to climate and to consumers and businesses whose energy expenses remains high. So, as part of the ACER regulation and the electricity market design files, we need to strengthen regulatory oversight so that national TSOs do not discriminate against energy from other member states. So 2 points from my part. Raising the bar when it comes to expanding and improving infrastructure, not least for electricity. And secondly, asking member states in council to fight protectionist behavior from TSOs harming the green energy transition within Europe. And furthermore, to support Parliament's position when it comes to regulatory oversight. Speaking of member states and green transition, let's take a step back. And 15 leaders from across the world signed the Paris Climate Accord, paving the way to a sustainable future. A future of less CO2 and more renewables, future of clean energy jobs for our workers and low energy costs for consumers and businesses alike. Cleaner air for citizens, reduced reliance on foreign imports, oil, gas, coal for member states. So, European leaders committed to all these objectives 3 years ago. But however, it seems that governments all over Europe seems to forget these commitments when we get down to the actual business and negotiating in Brussels. And I don't know what we can call this term, some sort of green amnesia. My prediction is that we have to somehow square this. If we are to live up to the Paris climate objectives, we also need more speed in terms of negotiating the files that we're doing at the moment. A couple of examples. On renewable energy and energy efficiency, many member states are trying to lower the targets of the Commission, whereas the Parliament are trying to push in the other direction. On electricity market design and on the ACER regulation, some member states might want to limit regulatory oversight, which I find too bad. So I urge member states and governments also to take a hard look at the objectives agreed upon in Paris and ensure delivery also when negotiating in Brussels. If this doesn't align, we might have to change direction. I think European Parliament is ready to be co-driver, so to speak, on this. So hopefully we can increase speed further in all these negotiations in order to accomplish our objectives. Let me finish off by again thanking the Commission, the Commissioner and Minister Lilholt for this opportunity to debate and learn more about these interesting topics. A forum like this is extremely important if we are to live up to the challenges that are ahead of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peterson, and also thank you, gentlemen. And with the 3 keynote speeches, we can declare the 4th Energy Infrastructure Forum open. And that brings me to our first point, and it's a very nice one. It has also a tradition. It is part of the forum since we have celebrated the first time. It is the Renewable Grid Initiative 2018 Best Practice Awards. The Commissioner has mentioned it. And here I would like to invite the founder and the CEO of Renewable Grid Initiative, Antonella Battaglini, on the stage. And I hand over to you, Antonella, this agenda point. Please lead us through the award session.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here. This is the third time, and this is short time. We are going to celebrate 3 practices for the Good Practices of the Year Award. So, who are we? We are Renewables Grid Initiative, 9 years old and still a unique animal in town. Transmission system operators and environmental NGOs from across Europe. Used to be enemy, and now we work together because no one alone can actually do this energy transition. We have set up this award because we need to showcase those who really dare to experiment something new. They deserve to be on stage. And so today we are celebrating 3 categories: communication and participation, because if we do not communicate, we are alone on a journey, that's sad. Technology and design, because technology is what is going to drive this transformation. And finally, environmental protection, because nature is the home we live in. And if we don't protect the environment, well, we have no home. These are the 3 categories. We have started with these categories being focused on the electricity sector, because RGI is about electricity. But we have recognized the strong role of gas, power to gas. And so from next year onwards, we will have a new set of categories just for gas and green gas. I hope that the gas people will participate. And now I would like to introduce our jury, fantastic jury. This is a kind of a marathon. We have been given such a short time frame that I need to rush through. We have very distinguished members of the jury. We are very lucky to have 3 of them with us today, and they will hand over the prizes. And of course, we are very happy to connect each of you with them. They don't know about us, but we are happy to do it if you have any interest in this. And with this, I would like to welcome, actually, the fact that soon after the award, you will be able to get our beautiful brochure, where you find most of the awards that have been presented this year, not all, but definitely the most interesting, on top, of course, of the winners. And now I would like to introduce Marie Donnelly. She is one of our jury members. She has been with us from the very beginning, and she will hand out the prize. No, she will not hand out the prize, but she will introduce the category on technology and design. Thank you very much. Marie, it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and it's such a pleasure to be here today. I'm under very strict instructions. I have 35 seconds, so I will immediately go into the discussion of the Technology and Design Award. And this year, the submissions and proposals that we received were really, really very interesting. They demonstrated an understanding of energy integration, a really advanced stage of cooperation between TSOs and DSOs, some very, I would say, architectural, even modern art style grid design, electricity demand for electric vehicles, which is the first time I think we've had that. It's a really nice idea to bring it in. And of course, smart distribution. And the winner is, I'm told to wait for a drum roll. So maybe I could announce the winner. The winner is WiseGrid. And the reason why the jury has selected WiseGrid is because it demonstrates partnership. It demonstrates partnership in two ways. One, there are 21 European partners involved in this, and we all know how complicated that is to deal with. It's also a partnership of technologies and approaches. So we have distributed energy, electric vehicles, demand response, storage, all brought together using advanced ICT services and systems, and most importantly, all focused around the European consumer. The jury was really impressed with the solutions approach, the smart, stable and secure solution, and a consumer-centric approach for the energy system for the European consumer. So congratulations, WiseGrid. Well done indeed.
To ensure that the energy transition leads to a more democratic model, we need to work hard on developing smart, secure, stable and affordable solutions. This is why, with the support of the Horizon 2020 programme of the European Commission, a consortium of 21 partners started a European project called WiseGrid. WiseGrid goes beyond empowerment. The project doesn't only attribute a central role to citizens, it also makes a difference in the market by delivering 9 technological solutions for prosumers and consumers. These WiseGrid integrated solutions will be demonstrated and evaluated in real life in 4 demonstrator cities in Belgium, Italy, Spain and Greece, contributing therefore effectively to the transition towards energy democracy. For more information, please visit wisegrid.eu.
Hello, everybody. It is a pleasure for me to be here today as the visible face of this amazing project and pick up this award on behalf of the WiseGrid Consortium. Actually, there are a lot of people and companies currently working on this project, and they make possible to develop it. So this award really belongs to them. Also, we think that we are so proud for being recognized as a cutting-edge project towards the energy democracy, because we think that only smarter systems can lead the way to a more decentralized energy system in which the new empowered citizens can be in the center of the new renewable energy transition. We think that with these 9 products, we can achieve this energy transition because they work in a synergy framework. These 9 tools, they are not standalone products. They work in a cooperative way for smartening the distribution grid. All the actors of this of the energy field, such as, for example, microgrid operators, energy cooperatives, and even small and medium prosumers and consumers, can take advantage of our technologies and work together to find win-to-win situations. So this award proves that we are working on the right way, and it is a good incentive for continuing developing the project according to our objectives. Objectives which I think that are the same as yours. So I don't want to spend more of your time, so thank you so much for your patience. Thank you again for the award, and see you during this interesting forum. Good afternoon.
So and now let me introduce the new jury member, Bart. It's impossible to pronounce his surname, so he will tell you himself. But please, we had a choreography. So when the prize is announced, please don't yet come. Let's first watch the video and then come on stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for having me back, both as a jury member and award giver or presenter. I'm introducing the winner of the environmental protection category. It's a category which was said in the opening speech here is extremely important. We have to, preserve nature and biodiversity, and we have to focus this category on projects that success in that field, both in bird, wildlife protection, habitat restoration, along grid lines, of course, and ecosystem enhancements, and many, many more. The winner of this year's environmental protection category is, again, Smart Island by Giglio Archipelago from Tenet Plus. But before you enter the stage, I would like to read the jury testimonial. Our winner in the category Environmental Protection comes from Tenet Plus, as said, and focus on redeveloping the landfill into a green area for renewable energy power production on Gianutri Island in Italy. The project aims to create a photovoltaic field to reduce the impact of humans on the island and to reduce dependencies on diesel fuel. The jury chose this practice because it is a very practical example of local transition from the old to the new world, enhancing existing land. Jury members were impressed by its focus and environmental commitment. Please join me on stage to receive the award.
So, good afternoon, everybody. We build our future every day with our ideas, actions, enthusiasm, and dreams. And sometimes dreams come true. We have 21 little islands in Italy. Most of them are so far from continental coast that we cannot connect them by marine cables. These little islands is powered by diesel power plants, and there are technical problems and environmental risks. Energy demand is not covered all the time, especially during summer season, when tourism increases the energy consumption. Air pollution produced by diesel combustion, fuel transport across the sea, fuel storage on the island. We want a different future for these islands. Energy demand covered all the time, clean and green energy from renewables, local electric system, modern, smart, and secure, environmental risk minimized. What are we doing in Gianutri Islands? a new project in 2 steps. First steps, okay, actions, 4 actions, recovery of a waste storage area, and there, installation of 60 kilowatts of photovoltaic on the shelter's roof, and then storage system installation and control system installation. The expected results are 30% of annual energy demand covered by renewables and 100% of daily demand covered by renewables 10 months per year. And after the second steps that will end next year, 3 actions, modernization of existing diesel power plants, and their installation of another 90 kilowatts of photovoltaic on shelter's roof, and storage system installation. And the expected results are 90% of annual energy demand covered by renewables. This little dream is coming true in Genutri Islands, and that is the first step of the list of other 20 little islands in Italy. A little dream that represents a little contribution to the energy transition. Thank you.
And now please, Mike Hogan for the last category. Welcome.
Thanks, Antonella. If you're in this room, you already know that expanding the transmission network is essential to an affordable and reliable transition. The founding genius of RGI was to appreciate that radical new approaches to communication and participation were needed to make that happen on time. It's about more than just acknowledging the interests of stakeholders, which frankly are usually pretty apparent. It's about understanding and respecting their values. So this category epitomizes the founding spirit of RGI, and the jury was deeply impressed by the dedication and creativity of all the applicants. We received a lot of great ideas, from innovative forms of inclusive dialogue, to ideas for expanding outreach, to creative engagement with young people. And now, and again, if you'll stay seated for a moment, the winner is Innovative Public Participation from Transnet BV and TenneT. Our winning practice in this category looks at public participation in Germany's biggest electric grid project, Südlink. The process, which critically was co-developed with local governments and communities, included a range of proactive engagement formats, such as an online platform and local outreach forums. Planning more than 800 kilometers of new infrastructure across the length of Germany is truly a societal undertaking. So it was of utmost importance to seek out engagement with local communities and inspire their participation. The easy web GIS interface the project used to gather input, together with an energetic approach to communication, based on openness, transparency, and active engagement, caught the special attention of the jury. More than 7,000 people actively engaged during the process, and that engagement benefited the project precisely by reflecting community values. The jury congratulates both TSOs and invites them here to receive their award.
Thank you.
Germany wants the energy transition, but this can only be achieved if the necessary infrastructure is created. The central project in this network expansion is Südlink. Südlink will transport wind power north to south via underground cables. The implementation of such a large underground cable project is followed by IT. Therefore, TenneT and Transnet BV decided to maximize transparency and published all planning data for the corridor proposals. They set up the WebGIS online participation platform based on a geographical information system. All comments were processed by the planners and included in the planning. In addition, a large project team was present on the ground. 36 info forums were implemented. Off-podium, with time and space for personal discussions. Never before has there been such early and comprehensive public participation in a power grid project in Germany.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and it's an honor for us and for the entire team to be here today and to receive that award. SuedLink has a special meaning for us. SuedLink links the industrial and economical centers in the south of Germany to the renewable resources in the north, thus providing 4 gigawatts of power. SuedLink is, if you want to say so, a backbone project for the German Energiewende. And we do have a strong commitment towards this Energiewende. We want to make that successful. And therefore, it was very important for us to make SuedLink successful as well. SuedLink is crossing 6 federal states, 38 areas, and almost 400 cities and municipal communities. You can imagine that participation, therefore, is quite important. And therefore, it was very important for us to talk to people, to involve people, and to acquire a sort of social and public operational license. And it's therefore a real honor to get that award. Thank you very much. Thank you for the jury, and thanks to all of you.
Oops. Yes, Commissioner, Minister, Member of Parliament, also from my side, from TenneT, a few words. Since 2015, our team, consisting of Transnet BW and TenneT, is busy with traveling around Germany to seek dialogue with citizens and to listen to their concerns. That's very important. And to be frank, we were quite surprised about the success of our participation concept. Of course, that's nice because it proves that our effort is worthwhile, but the effort is also indispensable and necessary. And we have learned that people want to participate. They want to actively be involved in the process. And of course, in the end, you will not be able to persuade and to convince everybody, but the effort of participation creates an atmosphere for social acceptance and creates confidence in our project. And in this way, we have set a standard in the past years with which we want to be measured in the future. That is very important. We would like to take this opportunity today to thank all the colleagues behind the project, behind the participation concept, and behind the success so far. So finally, of course, I would like also, and we would like also to thank the jury, because we are so enthusiastic about this award today, since it proves that we are on the right track. Thank you very much.
So can I ask all the winners, all the jury, to come on stage for a family photo? Thank you. Okay, in front.
Okay.
Good. Go in front.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we can therefore close the reward ceremony, and thank you very much, Antonella, for having led us so elegantly through this session. And the Commissioner is leaving us, and I would like to thank him because he is always coming. It's for the fourth time since the beginning in the row that he is joining us for the opening ceremony. I can tell you that is not a normal standard, and therefore I think we should be very grateful for that. So, now we can then come to our substantive main topic for today. More to follow tomorrow, but for today we have chosen, I think, a high-level session with a topic that you find being discussed almost at all conferences and workshops when it comes to energy, and that is digitalization. Everybody is talking about it, but nobody knows what it is. It has become a buzzword. It is used in all different contexts. And I'm very happy that recently there have been initiatives in order to identify the angles under which digitalization has to enter and will enter into our energy system. It is, of course, clear that here we are in Copenhagen at the Infrastructure Forum, that we are focusing first and foremost on the digitalization in the context of our transmission and distribution grids. Don't forget here the distribution grids. I would even tend to say that there is from the infrastructure side, more to gain in the distribution grids from digitalization than in the transmission grids. And that, of course, has to do also with one of our major challenges that we have, and that is the integration of increasing renewables into our grids. And as you know, most of the renewables are going directly into the distribution grid. And this, of course, means from the grid side a huge challenge in terms of system and grid security stability. And that's why we have to improve our grid operations through digitalization. And there's a wide range of possibilities in which we can do that. But it is not only that, because whenever you run your grids, a lot of data also are collected, are managed, and data will be, in the new energy system, the big money. Those who have access to the data will have also huge possibilities to develop business models. And therefore, innovation and intelligence in the networks at all levels is essential. For instance, to develop demand management is essential also for developing new smart grid services. And this means management and access to data. And the number of data we will have to deal with and cope with in future is so enormous that you cannot do that without digital tools. Furthermore, we have to think in the future in terms of network creation in combination with new business models. So we have to look beyond the borders of the energy system and also taking in sectors like heating and cooling, transport, but also industries where we can do a lot in terms of raising competitiveness of our industry, that especially our industry that is using to a large extent the energy. And again, in order to do this, what we can get from digitalization is to orchestrate in real time the units, the data, the supply, the demand in real time. And that is what brings us closer to then new business models. This, of course, all is new territory. And major player on this territory, because the infrastructure is so important here, are the TSOs and the DSOs. And therefore, TSOs and DSOs need to master new cooperation models. The times where the transmission system operator just dropped the electrons to the distribution grid operator are over. As I have said, it is much more interdependent and much, much bigger. The Commissioner has mentioned also the need for common planning, development. Mr. Peterson has mentioned also the need to optimize existing capacities and in the grid, and that also means less investment into the copper plate in Europe. All these things are coming here together. Last thing to mention, of course, is that for all this, regulation or regulatory framework can be either an accelerator or a barrier, or some would be a nightmare. So this is also a regulatory challenge to do the regulatory framework in a way that it sets incentives to go down the digital road and not hampering these developments. And that's a kind of the art. And these questions all together, I am very happy now to discuss with my panelists, which I now would like to invite to join me here on stage. We have first Maya Chebo. He is Chief Officer, Global Power Digital Solutions from General Electric. Mr. Chebo, welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
We also have Thomas Eggebo. He is President and CEO from Energinet. So he has a home play here. And last but not least, because I've mentioned the importance of the regulatory side, I'm very happy to have here also Garrett Blaney, the Chairman of the Board of Regulators from ACER. Garrett, welcome to the panel. So, first of all, we will take in some statements from my colleagues here on the panel, and then I immediately also leave it to you to make the best out of this panel also for you. First, I would like to start with Mr. Chebo, because he is leading the digital transformation at Power and Utilities for General Electric, and I think here we will already get some insights from the industry, business side, and I would like to start with that.
Thank you.
Please,
I'll go there if you don't
Maya.
mind.
As you like, from here or from there.
Yes, can you hear me? Thank you for the invitation, and congratulations for the winners. So I'm going to speak about the digital transformation. So a lot of things changed over time. So if you take the steam machines that were invented in 1769, that was a revolution. They were used in transportation, locomotive. They were used also in planes. They were used in the whole industry. That was a revolution. If you take the computers, the invention of computers was through machines with architecture which led to operating systems. That was by von Neumann in 1946. So these machines that you see here were occupying a big space, which is not working. So maybe you can help me. Next slide. So they were occupying a big space with a great weight, 25 tons, and then only doing, that time it was a revolution, 5,000 instructions per second. So today, we have small microprocessors weighing 100 grams rather than 25 tons and doing 25 billion instructions per second. And this is not the end of the story. That will continue in improving. Next one. So everything that we were seeing in Mission Impossible or James Bond movies, they were science fiction, but today they are reality. So you see that full electrical helicopters, for example, not using anything of fuel. This is Volcocopter. We have seen the solar impulse that rotate around the planet 40,000 kilometers, and they did not use any single fuel there. It was just with solar. We see also the automatic and autonomous driving with the cars, with a lot of sensors on that, 3D and augmented reality. And we can even put processors on our skin and get health information which is provided to our doctor that he can prevent any accident that could happen anytime. And of course, in terms of navigation and traffic in smart cities, we can see a lot. You can even visit, museums only by having the navigation with your smartphone. Next one. So the past can teach us a lot. So even if you have invented a lot of things in the past, we still believe that the domain of preventing, analyzing data, and improving our life is important. So in the past, we have a huge number of data, and that could be great learnings for our future. Next one. So today, we have only 2% of all the data we have collected which is being analyzed, only 2%. And the question is, should we look a bit into the remaining 98% and do some learnings that we can predict the future? Next one. So we want always to be more efficient, more flexible. There was the mentioning of the demand response management, everything that can improve and optimize the energy consumption. We want to improve the health. So if you can tomorrow predict when the cancer will happen, this is a huge findings, for example, for the humanity. And you can do a lot with digitalization with that. And in cities, you need as well to make our cities well-being and have reduced the emissions and calculate any time and simulate how we can reduce the emissions. Briefly, we need to improve our well-being. So we should be capable to predict the future by using the best data. How we do it? So the digital twin is as much as you can have dynamically the information about the physics and the machines you are using and all the energy system that you are using, then you can make progress. So the digital twin is not only just a shadowing, and we have an example in aerospace. Next slide. So when you look at the black box of a plane, it has the whole history of the data of a plane, from the engineering to the manufacturing to when it starts flying. Who was the pilot? In which countries? What are the conditions? Did we face anything? Everything is being traced. And through the association, IATA, for example, they share everything in the practices about the incidents that happen, that you can keep improving the flight of the planes, their reliability, and reduces the number of crashes. Next one. So in the energy space, we invented the digital twin, so which means you could put sensors, collect the data from your energy infrastructure, the pressure, the temperature, and so on, put it in digital platforms, and then knowing the history, you can predict and prevent the incidents that could happen. For example, at Exelon, when it comes to the nuclear fleet, so you need 5 years of data. Collecting that 5 years of data can give us the information how we can prevent any risk 6 months ahead. And if we look at the renewables, you will have millions of distributed energy resources. I mean, this is the country of renewables. 50% would come from wind here in Denmark. So the maintenance, the cost of the maintenance, the information about all the distributed energy resources that you have, and the wind turbines, collecting that information will help us optimizing the energy produced, the output, and managing the virtual power plants. So now the data is key. We cannot manage what we cannot measure. So we need to free up the data. Doesn't mean we need to give it to anyone. We need to use the data. So when in Finland, for example, Fingrid and the regulator puts in place a program of data hub collecting the information from more than 3 million customers, it's to ask also the innovation and startup companies is to create services for energy efficiency and even social services. So this is key to innovate into our future energy. Next one. So we should free up the creativity. There is a lot of still software and solutions and digitalization that is required in flexibility. The creation of e-marketplaces, so how to connect the distribution electricity networks with ESCOs, aggregators, and retailers. There is a project called Flexiciency, for example, funded by the European Commission, Horizon 2020, around that. The whole data intelligence, moving more from just reporting and giving transparency and insights to more learning. And learning is everything, all the practices that you see that helps you understand and taking actions. For example, if you are with autonomous driving and the car is driving itself and you see like a ball coming, maybe you could say it's not that dangerous, I can continue. But with your system of learning, say if there is a ball, then there should be a kid behind it, then I should stop. All of that is learning, is contextual learning. Now, this is an example of what could be use cases that could be used in the digitalization across the value chain. It's in assets, it's investments and planning in the electricity networks, it's in demand management, it's in everything around performance management. So the digitalization and what you heard before is the availability of data and how we can analyze it. It's technology, yes, but what counts is the use cases. So at the end, the use cases that digitalization can provide, this is what will provide value for the customers at the end for utilities. Next one. So some examples, PG&E, we took the data from 30 sources of IT and OT systems, and that data, which is taking information about storms, taking information about everything that happened in the past, can help us predicting, for example, when the storms will happen and what are the actions we need to take to prevent, for example, all the catastrophes and all the incidents that happened in the past. So how to react, put in place the recovery plans. So all of that needs to take like data from a lot of sources. IT systems are systems that are more non-real-time. Operational technology systems are systems like GIS systems, outage management systems, SCADA systems for supervision and control. So you need to collect that data from both of them and analyze it and take actions. Next example is the blockchain example. So we have 4 microgrids in the Navy Yard in Philadelphia. It's an investment development community. You've got 30,000 employees living there. The 4 microgrids, you've got tenants, so you've got some of them who are producing renewables, and you could sell renewables to others when they need it, and you don't need it. So this is how we do it with the blockchain, is creating a portal, doing the billing peer-to-peer transactions, and actually one of the scenarios of the blockchain is in communities. Another example, yes. Now, let me speak about the picture of what we are doing as well, being contributed to the European Commission project. So this is a picture we had about how the energy system should be optimized between the energy players and the customers. So the energy players have a target, diversification in terms of power generation, cleaner, reducing the cost of operations for the grid companies, opening the grid to different players, and the retailers being more close, aware, and work with the customers like we do in telecom. Right. So now there's a lot of things that happened, and our vision is by 2025, 90% of the commercial industrial customers and 70% of the residential customers would be equipped with smart energy. And that's feasible. Today, with all the data we could be collecting, we are capable beyond the deployment of smart metering, which is going to be 72% minimum by 2020. Beyond smart metering, we are capable to have smart energy systems in place. Next one. So there was a foundation of the organization called ETIPSNet, European Technology and Innovation Platform for Smart Network Energy Transition. And the evolution we have made between the picture, which was very much electricity focused, and now is to look at the holistic system. So now we are looking at the whole energy system, including gas, including even the other natural resources and fuel and waste and water, and saying the whole picture will be using less and less waste time of fuel, more and more renewables, and will get us closer to the cyclic economy. There will be a Vision 2050 that will be published on the 27th of June that describe that picture here. Now, within the ETIPSnet, next slide, we have formed 5 working groups. One of them is the digitalization. I have the pleasure to chair the group on the digitalization of the electricity system or the energy system and customer participation. I call it digital energy. We have created 3 task forces. One is, what is the state of the art of technologies? The second one is, what's the list of the use cases we could have? Because this is the value at the end you could bring to the customers. And the third one is about how to make the system robust, is cybersecurity. Next one. So just to give you some insights, one of the examples we have listed in the use cases on the left is a project close to Amsterdam, within Amsterdam if you wish, is a project called Juliet. So here we are doing the transactions between the different inhabitants in that community, where if they can produce renewables from photovoltaics, they could sell it to the others who are living in the same community. And then we are doing the whole peer-to-peer transactions. We reduce these transactions, we enable people to produce more from clean, and we connect them. And we have described a lot of other use cases in the area of mobility, electromobility, and so on. On the right side, you've got a lot of things we have put in the recommendations, and the document for digital energy is going to be produced at the end of June this year. The draft is finished, we are under review, and these are the future challenges we see in cybersecurity. So everything that about new crypto environments, bio-nano challenges, robotics, we say yes, there is vulnerability, and we need to investigate how to put in place the frameworks that we keep them cyber secured. Next one. Now, I would like to bring, before my conclusion, a few numbers. This is from the World Economic Forum. Digitalization, yes, brings value. And some of the estimations the World Economic Forum has done across the value chain is just by eliminating downtime, we are saving close to 400 billion. Just by matching the supply and demand, we are providing benefits of close to 200 billion. So in total, value for the economy, $1.3 trillion. Value for the society, $2 trillion. My conclusion is the following. Next slide. So digital platforms, digital twins, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of these will disrupt the future of energy networks. Definitely they will bring a lot in terms of understanding the past, our heritage, if you wish, if you are a bit romantic, and predicting what the future will be and preventing the incidents. Then the conversions of IT/OT, we will see more and more conversions between non-real-time systems and the real-time systems, supervision and control and so on. That requires a collaboration around innovation. We cannot do everything on our own. We need to collaborate with the others. Other corporates, system operators, industrials, startups. That collaboration across what I would call maybe a Silicon Valley of cooperation virtually, virtual Silicon Valley, is very much important across Europe. When you speak about digital, we should not make any mistake. Yes, I spent maybe 21 years before at SAP in software and digital business. I'm taking care of digital AGE since 1 year. But I'm the first one who says it's not a story of technology. It's a story of value, use cases. Every use case can be evaluated in terms of value, whether we are talking about strategic outcome or tangible benefits that could be evaluated in millions. And then the energy transition requires to look at the full picture. We have made the mistake probably in 2005 when we were very much working in silos, electricity people on their own, gas people on their own, and other people on their own. So we have to look at the holistic view. If your system should be optimal and reduce CO2 and provide energy efficiency and help us to be energy independent, we need to look at the holistic view. And this is the subject that we have focused on in our Vision 2050, where there will be a paper issued on the 27th of June. The energy transition should be customer-centric. Finish the time when the customer is at the end is only emitter, maximum emitter. So there will be a reverse of the value chain. So the customers will tell what they want. The understanding of the different categories of customers, what they require, the services they need, that's going to be like in other services industries. Retail, telecom, all the other services industries know how to deal with the customer. There will be more and more investments in this area. And to finish, and I have been in Malmö speaking in different sessions, people repeated that again. So pilots, it's good. That's fantastic. It helps us reducing the risk. But at the end, we have to invest, see the pilots, learn from the results. After we learn from the results, roll out. So everything which is around accelerated rollout of things. If tomorrow you have a platform called like an Apple Store, and you put everything you develop on that platform like an Apple Store that are energy efficiency services, as a kind of one-stop shop, you accelerate the promotion of these energy services that the 4,000 retailers in Europe, with the help of the 2,400 distribution electricity companies in Europe, you will help to roll out all of that to the European countries. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maya, for this very comprehensive description of what the potential is there. And also, I would really like to underscore what you have said with your transition vision to 2050, because that is also something that in a lot of discussions falls short, that you are not taking the holistic view on the complete system and you are focusing too much on silos. I think that will also be in the middle of our discussions. And there are other points I have noted, but I leave that for later, because now we are turning to the TSO perspective. And Thomas Eggebo, he comes just from a digital roundtable that was organized by Energinet and ENTSO-E and has taken place today. And I think it is interesting to see now, after having seen it more from the business perspective, to see how the transmission system operators see their future in this digital energy world.
So is it on? Can you hear me? Yes. Well, thanks a lot, and thanks you for the introduction. And ladies and gentlemen, yes, indeed, I have the privilege and the pleasure to bring to you the conclusions from the digital roundtable that we at Energinet organized together with ENTSO-E. And I'm happy to say, actually, that it was a success. We had more than 150 participants from leading companies in the energy and digital sectors, both from Europe and beyond. And I'll now try to convey the most important takeaways from the discussions earlier today. I think the energy system is transitioning from a linear production chain to a decentralized, fluctuating ecosystem type production chain. And this calls for new business models and new partnerships. And I believe that the energy and digital sectors could be the power couple of this era, a power couple that has the potential to catalyze the ongoing decarbonization of the energy sector. But to release this potential, we need to see a coherent picture of how the energy system is transforming. We need to develop the energy markets in a way that fosters sound business models that meets the dual target of, on the one side, valuing the energy in accordance with the state of the energy system, and on the other side, provide an attractive value proposition to its customers. But how do we do that? The digital roundtable was organized to help release the potential inherent in the power couple that is the energy sector and the digital sector. And one main takeaway from today was that disruption is not just hype, it is real, and it is hitting the energy sector already. It is happening already. And I think the previous speaker gave a very good illustration of this. And of course, the answer is not to protect ourselves from changes. We all know what happens to the dinosaurs of any business. The answer is to learn from sectors that are ahead of us in this transformation and to embrace the opportunities presented to us. And to support this, transmission systems operators should, first of all, set data free. We need to release our data in order to make them power new business models. The fuel of digitalization is data. Therefore, data should be easily accessible. Second, we should be open for new partnerships with players also outside our sector. Partnerships that create mutual value. And thirdly, we should be open to the bottom-up approach in business development, which requires learning, experimentation, etc., a point also well made just before. And the energy sector alone cannot ensure the success of this transition. Policymakers, of course, also play an important role. And I'm full of confidence in our European approach to policymaking. I think the clean energy package sets the bar high, and the Commission will follow up with more targeted legislation. But a humble advice to policymakers when making legislation in this field is to keep in mind the very rapid developments in the digital technologies. Disruptions are unexpected, happen almost overnight, and bring fundamental changes. So let us ensure that the next unicorn company in the digitalization of the energy sector is European and not held back by impractical legislation. A smart sector needs smart legislation. The digital roundtable also highlighted the exponential drop in costs of renewable energy production. So we are sort of looking into a near zero marginal costs future by the end of the next decade. So the future focus will not necessarily be the cost of energy, but the value of energy and cost of synergy. And this will fundamentally change the sector as we know it. A connected energy sector across transport, heating, gas, cooling, transmission, distribution, etc., will help us meet the challenge of intermittent renewable energy production. So the power couple of energy and digital is a partnership across all stakeholders in these sectors. This new reality will bring new opportunities, but also new threats. And of course, cybersecurity remains an obvious foe. It was mentioned again and again at the Digital Forum. And this is a foe to be taken very seriously. Intermittent production will also challenge system security, but the solution might be found in sector coupling and by empowering consumers to reap the benefits of flexible consumption. I also took note, actually, how dedicated the major digital companies are to the green transition. The climate change is happening on a massive scale, and our answer needs to be of a similar scale. So we are kind of witnessing a grand social experiment in seeing consumers taking a more active role in the energy system. So far, we have only seen relatively small reactions to the even large price spikes. But for instance, electrical vehicles could be the trigger for this price response through electrification. And underpinning it all is the digital tools that makes it all possible. And I therefore strongly believe that energy and the digital sectors will be the power couple of the future. In fact, in many ways, they already are. And digital solutions are already changing energy markets today. Anyway, the digital roundtable was streamed, and the recordings can be accessed on the dedicated web page. So I invite you to go and have a look for yourselves, and please also do contact us if there is something in this regard you would like to work on together. So with this, I'll end my introductory speak here, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and for having shared with us the takeaways from your digital roundtable. I think it is an excellent idea to have installed such a roundtable. And also, I think what you have given us as an overview shows that you are facing the challenges and the disruption that you are already seeing coming. And but you're not afraid. You take it on and you try to develop, make out of a challenge an opportunity. And I think that's the right approach. But you also, of course, have already looked at the legislator and the regulator and have said, please be smart, because if you want a smart system, you have to have a smart regulatory framework. So, Gerrit, please tell me, are you an accelerator or are you a destroyer? Are you smart or you are unsmart? What are you, regulators?
Thank you, Klaus-Dieter. It's a very good question, and we've been doing a bit of thinking as regulators ourselves in what is our strategy going forward? What do we see ourselves as? What are our primary strategic objectives? So we've had a discussion internally, and we're talking, we see 3 Ds as a key sort of next step for us as regulators. Digitalization, but not digitalization as an objective, digitalization for the consumer. It has to be about consumer value and consumer benefit. Digitalization for us on its own, it's not necessarily a great outcome. I was looking at a figure there. There's 2 million pictures of videos in YouTube of cats. Well, what's the public interest in that? Is that a great thing? Is that something that regulators should care about? I don't know. But let me give you another figure. There's less than 30% utilization of the networks across the systems in Europe. Now, is that not something we should worry about? This is an infrastructure forum. Let's get better value for the existing infrastructure. Now, if digitalization is a tool, yes, that's great if it can get a good outcome. But digitalization on its own, I'm not sure we should care about 2 million cats videos. That's just there's a lot of information out there that has to be stored. So what? It has some sort of energy implications, I suppose. We also see decarbonization at least cost. So the cost element of decarbonization, actually, digital again is a tool for that. How do we get the resources that are there at the consumer, right at the behind the meter, part of the wholesale markets? Can we get fungibility so we can bring wholesale and retail together so that they can all compete on a level playing field, and we can get all those resources at the consumer level, whether it's production, whether it's demand side, it might be storage. If we don't start to solve some of these problems, and particularly with electrification, so we've got new sources like electric vehicles, they're all going to add major challenges to the grid. And if we don't adopt digitalization, if we don't support digitalization, we're looking into and facing quite a difficult future. So what interests us as regulators is using digitalization to benefit consumers. So I've got the 3 Ds. The last D in this is for ourselves, and this is dynamic regulation. And we recognize that it's not, we can't just blame everyone else. You all have to change, but we're perfect. We need to change too as regulators. So dynamic regulation is part of this. We need to start to think about solving tomorrow's problems before they happen, rather than always looking in the rear view mirror and worrying about the problems of the past. So the answer, I suppose, for us in digitalization is we like it, and we're very worried about it also at the same time. So it's a sort of a like and hate relationship that we have with digitalization. Let me go through the likes first. Let me talk through. So the next slide, and sorry, the last piece on just to go back to the last slide, it's all about the consumer and the consumer benefit. Consumer protection, consumer empowerment. If it's not working for the consumer, we're not interested. So even encouraging, whether it's networks, whether it's the rest of the market, whether it's equipment providers, as long as all of that's done with the consumer protection and consumer empowerment, then we're with you. Where that's not, and it's just about profit making for all those organizations, then we're not interested. So it's really about trying to align the consumer interest with people's interest in making a reasonable return in the market. So the next slide then is just to talk about all the possible things that we see as benefits coming through from digitalization. I won't go through all the lists here, but this idea that digitalization is a way of trying to open up and get fundamental change. I'll just come back to this thing about the consumer. We talked to the tech sector. I went to a presentation from some senior guy in Google. And, the tech sector's view is what they want to do is surprise and delight the consumer. Now, the problem is that I think the utility sector can do the surprise, but the delight piece is just not there yet. So I think there's a fundamental change. They need to rethink what it is that the utility sector is doing so that you start to rethink. Look at the telecom sector. We go back 5-10 years ago, they had what they called the MENs, Motorola, Ericsson, Nokia, Siemens. Where are they today? Is this the utility sector now in 5 or 10 years' time? And it's not that they didn't have clever technology. And it's not that things haven't got more complex. The phone today is much more complex than the phone 5 or 10 years ago. But the consumer finds it easier to use. They like it. So how do we try and get that sort of mentality through in the energy sector? And what's our role as regulators to try and trigger that innovation? Can we get new players in? We also need to think about, and then maybe I'll go through to the next slide then, is where the more conservative views of regulators are. We also are quite worried about the potentials that we've seen in the digital sphere and how that flows through from energy. So let me just look at the next slide and some of the worries that we have. There's quite a few areas where we're concerned. We can see the whole debate that's going on in the digital sector. The new people in tend to be monopolies very quickly, and they tend to take over. We're seeing, even in the telecom sector, consolidation, where people in the media side are now trying to buy up the networks. We're potentially going to create very big, large new monopolies in the energy sector, and we need to think that through carefully. We need to think about data privacy. We need to think about who owns the data, making sure that, again, the consumer feels that it's working for them. So I think we'll need to be very careful about this. A lot of discussion about cybersecurity. I mean, just take an example of cybersecurity. It's not just the old traditional view of cybersecurity. We'll have lots of new distributed resource. You look at the transport sector. So the latest cars, Tesla, the car software comes from the company in California, and they can plug in new software, and the car tomorrow is a different car to the car yesterday. They change all the cars, the whole performance. They can change the way the car is charged on the network. Now, this is wonderful because then you can evolution. It can actually the technology can allow cars to respond in a different way. But what happens if some rogue nation or terrorists hack into California and all those cars suddenly decide they're going to destabilize the grid? So there's all these new vectors by which we need to start to think about, potential problems in the sector. We need to think outside the norm and try and protect as much as we can the consumers and collectively the systems as they go. And in the last slide maybe is just to sort of say, look, we need to think ourselves also about what is it that energy markets are trying to achieve in Europe. It's not that we're going to fundamentally change all the things we've been trying to do as regulators and bring markets together. I think a European solution to this is absolutely the right approach. No, if we want to get real digitalization happening quickly, we need to make Europe look much more like one market. The types of players who are looking to invest want to know that there's a common approach across Europe. So trying to get that cooperation across regulators and trying to ensure a European-wide approach we see as part of that dynamic regulation. So we clearly see a role that we have to change as well as the sector have to change. And maybe I'll just finish on that note and hope that we can work together and that you can see that regulators, we hope to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Thanks.
Let's find out, Garrett. Thank you very much, and I think it was very clear, your 3Ds and the consumer concentration on that, and also the opportunities and, of course, also the concerns clearly spelled out. But I would now like to give you the opportunity to comment or to ask questions to the panel here. Looking at the time, is there appetite for joining the debate here? Somebody has to start, yeah.
Is it on? Yeah, it's on. Hi. Bård Eilertsen, I was earlier on the jury. I've been working with digital technologies in the energy space since 2003. And it's probably the hardest market in the world to actually penetrate with anything called digital. But I think you are, some of what I hear is good, but lots of it scares me because I can't really see any change. When I hear what you are saying of regulation, TSOs, DSOs, technologies, I think we are losing actually the basic of what we are trying to do with the digital tools available, because it's just technology. If it doesn't bring value, don't use it, right? But if I shortly just comment how I see that world, I see it, if I compare it to the telecom world, I see the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Energy. That's a starting point. Sensor-driven economy. Very safely. When that's in place, you have integrated distributed energy resources. They don't have to be distributed. It could be renewables. It could be anything. When that's in place, you have transactive energy. Transactive energy is actually how do you manage flexibility? How do you manage available resources maximum in whatever kind of network there is? And then you have billing to grid and transport to grid and industry to grid. Not see them as consumption points, but see them as part of the grid, because they are consuming gas, heat, cooling. They are prosumers. They are basically, that's the load point of anything we generate, right? And when that's in place and we can manage that, then we have neural grids. And what's neural grids? Transmission operators, gone. Distribution operators, gone. What will happen is you will have a digital framework that operates in real time or based on historic values, everything from base generation all the way to consumption or prosuming or whatever you want to call it. That is done in a digital layer above everything. That's where we should focus, because what I hear now is that we digitize every single part of the value chain, and then we talk about, hopefully we'll create partnerships that can bundle this together. That's not going to happen. I've done this since 2003. It's not going to happen, not in the next 5 years at least. So I think it's time to start looking at the bigger picture of what digitalization is. And digitalization is not disruptive, no. But if you have a clear end game, where do you want to end up? And when I talk about neural grids, it's actually basically, it's a fully digital operated AI, machine learning, all the buzzwords in the world, but in a very controlled manner that actually takes away the boundaries between the transmission operators, the producers, the renewables, the asset owners, the buildings, the transport, everything is managed on a layer above everything. That is something we can regulate. That is something we can operate, and that is something that will come to the good for the environment, for the consumer, and basically for all within the industry. So I think we are shooting a bit off the target, if you ask me. I would like to see much clearer, if we talk about use cases, make these use cases much clearer, because that's the road to do it. Comment.
Oh, thank you very much. Very visionary. And yeah, please, Garrett.
I'll start. And I think I mean, in some ways, part of what we need to do is make sure that the value for digitalization is there, so people can understand what it is that you're trying to solve. I think we've done this already in the energy market. We've got now a target model, so we can see what energy is transacted right across Europe on a common platform, making that available to consumers. So we need things like smart meters, removing profiles, so that the exposure is really there for the consumer. I just think we need to be, I mean, we're a bit frustrated, I suppose, as regulators, that we've given money to utilities and they tend to set up an innovation team when they go off and they do some clever pilot projects, and then they don't change the core business at all. And I think for regulators, we find that frustrating, and they say, oh, but look, we spent the money efficiently. That's not the purpose. The purpose is actually to change and the core planning and the core things that have always been done are always done in the same way. So we find that difficult as regulators. I do think, though, that there's a whole set of new problems in this, algorithmic world that you're setting out. I've watched across, there's some really interesting questions in competition law where we have two self-learning algorithms that actually collude and start to create a cartel and, jack up prices. How do you manage that? There's big new questions coming in this world that we can't just presume that because it's digital and it's clever, it's going to be right. It can actually be wrong as well. So we need to be very careful, how we do this. And again, consumer protection is the core. And I think we'll need to think about new regulatory tools, working with other regulators. BEREC have a report out now on 5G. We need to look at where the telecom sector is going. They looked at they look at the transport sector. They look at, obviously entertainment and media. And then they say the energy sector, no, too conservative. We won't even bother with them. They're so far behind the rest. So we do need to think about, how we can be more open to new ideas. But I think we also need to be very careful. There will be new problems with the new solutions.
Thomas, if Watt's vision becomes reality, you are out. Are you worried?
Personally, I'm not worried because then I think I'll have retired. It's an interesting future. But that being said, of course, I do think that all these new technologies coming on, they do challenge the various roles that we have, the established players in the energy system, and we should, of course, somehow be open to what is going to happen. But I do think, and maybe you also sort of assess that, wow, the energy sector has not been particularly sort of open to this and welcoming to these new changes, etc. I do think that we do need to be very focused on what is going on and do need to actually try to reap the benefits from all these technological changes and not turn our back to them. And where this will bring us eventually, well, I guess we'll have to see.
Thank you. Maya, what is your view?
So I think it's always a big dilemma between the specialization and the roles defined. So when the ENTSO-E and the IBEX defined 15 roles, when we had the unbundling, for example, in Europe, the objective was also to create competition. And with the competition, the consumers will win. But then afterwards we say, but look, we have to make it all work if it was integrated. And that digital can do it. This is an opportunity. So even if you have defined different roles, created the unbundling, the competition, digital can bring it together. How, as industrials, we are doing that? So one of the big transformation we have done is to put together the grid business with the power generation business at GE. Okay, now we could say, what about renewables? You could have put it together, but then at the end you have a big weight and a big profit and loss, and then you have one who is managing half of the company, so they think also about it. But so we have 36 billion in terms of the grid and power generation business, 57,000 people. We've got 10 billion in terms of the renewables business and 22,000 people. And between these two units, one which is grid power generation and the other one renewables, we create what we call the energy value chain. And the digitalization teams, for example, work together to create solutions that will be the most innovative ones. When I was in Kazakhstan, I was speaking with the CEO of Samruk Energo, and I was saying, look, we can make your assets here more performant, we can make your power plant more performant. He said, yeah, I'm interested more in the big picture. The big picture is how you link the generation, the virtual power plants with renewables, to the load dispatching, to the rest of the network, and then we can optimize that we have more flexibility, we can better manage the balancing, we can optimize what we need, and then save maybe the building in new power plants. If you do demand response management, and for that you need to look at the cross picture, you could save or shift about 10% of the energy capacity. And by 2040, you could save 20%. And this is the same picture in the US. Peak Load Management Association said we could shift about 10%. This is about 70 gigawatt. So I think it's an opportunity for us in digital to work and to come with solutions that are agnostic a bit of the roles that were defined, that are agnostic of the power of the associations, and every association wants to defend as well their stakeholders, and provide solutions that are as integrated as possible. I call it energy portfolio management. So energy portfolio management is putting all this information together, bringing the consumption, looking at the capacity that we have in place, linking that to the stock market with energy exchange and so on, and the flexibility. This is what we need to put in place, is how we manage the energy portfolio properly across all the stakeholders that are in place.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes? Oh, now I see two.
Good afternoon. My name is Lawrence Jones. I'm Vice President for International Programs at the Edison Electric Institute. The program actually works with about 70 odd utilities around the world with operations in about 90 countries. And I just want to come back to the comment that was made regarding the neural net or the neural grid. Whenever I hear infrastructure, what I find very fascinating is that we seem to sometimes forget that there is a coming together of the physical world and the digital world. And oftentimes when we have these discussions about infrastructure, it seems as though we think the digital world can function without the physical world. But in fact, as we think of infrastructure, there's a huge amount of investments that need to go in the physical world. And we need to be very careful when we forget that the digital world, while it creates a lot of value for optimizing how the physical world works, you still need to have a physical infrastructure. There's no such thing as a wireless electric grid. Electricity still has to flow through wires. The analogy with telecommunications is always very interesting. People think that telecommunication systems don't have infrastructure. The problem is those infrastructures are invisible. You don't see them. They're in satellites. In fact, most of the cables in the world are undersea cables that keep the internet working. So while I think the conversation and Mr. Egelbu's remarks are very great, because I think at the end of the day, regulators have to deal with two things. I think they have to deal with the push to go digital, which is great, but then they have to also realize at some point, you still need to have the electrical roads for the electrons to pass through. Even if you put a microgrid in a community, someone has to get a wire from point A to point B. Who incentivizes who owns that wire? So I think the role of the utility should not just be pushed aside as being roadblockers or dinosaurs. The physical system needs someone to invest in. And the risk I think we see around the world is that there's an sort of a quick move to digitalization, which is great, I'm all for it. But I think we should not forget that no digital system will work if you don't have the physical infrastructure. And what I haven't heard in the conversation today is how do you incentivize more investments in building the physical supergrids around Europe and other parts of the world? Because if we don't do that, all the digitalization you can do will sound great, but the wires will not be there to get the electrons from point A to point B. So I'd love to hear your comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think because I'm looking also to the watch, I think I take now two more, and then we do the final round here on the panel. I have seen one, and I can take one more. Here. So.
Stefan Campus, ENTSOG. We will not see the digitization and the great network fall from the sky. I'm afraid that in the beginning we have to build it up from the bottom and then bring it all together. The two things is, why should I do that? Because if I do it, the regulator will tell me that this cost brings me down in the benchmark, so you'll punish me for having done anything at all. And then the other point is, then my owner would say, why have you done that? There is no possible business model for a regulated undertaking behind that. You should be punished for that too. And then the third thing is I need to talk immediately to the customers and to my colleagues on the same level and on the levels below. And more important at this point in time, I need to talk to my colleagues from the electricity side, as I represent the gas side, and in between lies the truth, and not with them and not with us, but in the joint operation. And then I stumble over lots of hurdles that we have erected with the unbundling, which I not doubt has its merits, but it was there in the 90s seen as a problem, and in the 2000s solved by the third energy package and the unbundling rules. But now the challenge comes from a totally different side. I'm fully unbundled in the hands of a financial investor. Many of these companies are sitting there and they start to shiver because they want to take part, but there are a lot of obstacles that we have created on the way, and we need to drive that into a new regulatory framework. But that needs to set the framework for, I like this really, an integrated system and an integrated network, because also in the internet you start not to think how the things work together. First of all, you have to make them to work together. The customer doesn't notice. And we are very far away from that because we don't have managed the links, and we don't have done the investments, and we haven't done any real digitization steps in the last 10 years, in particular in the networks. There is a lot that we need to do. But are you ready, and are you able to set the framework in a reasonable time frame? Because I think if we don't start it right now, it gets really difficult, because we need also to test, and IT needs a lot of testing. First develop, then test it. Thank you.
Thank you. And the microphone here. Yes, thank you.
I'll be quick. I'm glad the phrase transactive energy was brought up, because I was surprised I didn't hear it in the presentations. There's been a lot of work and thought gone into the transactive energy as kind of the operational architecture of the digitalized energy system we're talking about. And I just want to bring up two specific current realities in Europe that I think basically represent where we're still basically in the Stone Age in terms of actually being able to make that happen on a transactive energy platform. And one is the extremely low deployment rates of smart meters. And with all apologies, Garrett, I lay the blame for that directly at the NRA's feet, because we keep evaluating the value of smart meters based on how valuable they would have been in 1995, not on how valuable they're going to be in 2022. The second is transactive energy is a nodal network. It operates based on price signals or signals about supply and demand at each node in a cascade of nodes throughout the network. And without nodal pricing on the wholesale system, it will never work. And where is nodal pricing in Europe right now? It's nowhere.
Thank you. So we start with Garrett.
I'll start. There's a lot there, but I think, I really like the point about the digital world needs physical infrastructure. And some of the things that we're seeing, and I just sort of share some of your experience we're seeing as the regulator in Ireland, as well as sort of the European regulator, we're seeing massive increase in demand as a result of data centers. So the digital world is having a direct effect today already in other sectors, but it's affecting the energy market. I went for my holidays to Iceland for Christmas. In Iceland, the cryptocurrency mining is a larger load than the domestic consumers. So, these are real issues, and these are not going to go away, and they're going to increase. And we need to start to look at also, as regulators, we need to start to think about locational signals. How do we get large demand as well as large generation to go to those places that minimizes the cost of the grid? So I think we understand that there's challenges. It's easy to understand the challenge sometimes. It's much more difficult to come up with a common solution that works across Europe. But we're having that debate. There's that discussion is going on. Stefan raised a couple of really important parts about our role as part of this. As I think, to be fair to regulators, it's all about value. If we can see the value, if we can ensure that that value is being built in right up front in the planning processes, if we can see that those are alternatives, digital alternatives to physical infrastructure that will get better use of the infrastructure, that helps a lot. Hopefully, if you can demonstrate that to us, that's also good for you in terms of, you know, the shareholders and the stakeholders. But I think we need to be very firm, and I said in the presentation, let's not lose all the great experience that we've had around the first, the second, and particularly the third package. We can't undo unbundling. That will be to the detriment of the consumer. There are many different models, like contracting models, that can happen that will allow the competitive market to help solve network problems without getting back into the ownership question. Because if we lose the ownership question, we will lose competitive markets. Retail markets will be destroyed if the TSOs can go in with their monopoly position and take over the consumers again and control them. So I do think we really need to make sure that we don't lose a lot of the progress that we've made at a European level. And look, the challenge is to try to get this done at a common position across Europe in a reasonable time frame. I think we recognise the challenge. I certainly won't promise that it'll all be solved, you know, before Christmas this year. It takes time. There are some really challenging questions in this. But also, as regulators, we constantly value the input that we get from the sector and from all the players. So I think that's very helpful. I think that the smart meter question is a core one. I think smart meters are absolute core to ensuring that we can get the consumer empowered as part of this process. I think we also need to make sure that, you know, we can set out that value, and I think there's more work to be done as regulators to set out that interface between the market and the consumer, and that all the resources, the prosumer, the storage, the demand side, all those resources at the consumer level can play on a level playing field with the large, you know, it's not a decentralized or a centralized model. Let them all compete. Let cost decide which is the model that goes forward. But I would caution about nodal pricing. I mean, I know we looked at it in the Irish market. We ended up with 340 nodes. You know, everyone was competing with it. And you destroy liquidity. So there's a challenge between liquidity at one end and nodal pricing at the other. You know, you end up with all this localized market power, and how does that work? So look, I think there's a broad question about nodal pricing and how it works. It's not clear to me that that's the only tool that we have in the regulatory toolbox. And I think we'd be keen to look at all the tools. I'm not sure that this nodal price sort of vision is necessarily the right one. But look, happy to continue the debate.
Thank you. Thomas?
I think the point about the difference between the digital system and the physical system was well made. And I think what is happening, of course, is that we all add kind of a digital layer on top of our physical assets. And I think that's a great opportunity to optimize our assets and extract more value from them. But this is sort of, I would say, known territory. It's also known territory, I would say, that we use artificial intelligence solutions to run our control rooms and optimize the way we run our wholesale electricity markets, etc. What I think is challenging for us is that at the same time we see all this renewable electricity coming onto the market at very, very low prices and at times being extremely plentiful. This also forms the basis, of course, for new digitally based business models that can deliver new services to consumers. And we're very pleased about that. So how can we actually spur that coming onto our markets? The challenge for us, I think, is how can we then extract system value from all these new business models? Because if we can't do that, I think our overall system will become too expensive. So that's, I think, a challenge which is slightly outside our sector, but also to some extent inside it. How do we do that? I think that's an interesting challenge for the energy system. And can I add a final question, because I also asked, what about the investments in the grid? Are they forthcoming? I think our experience, at least in Denmark, is that we have had a lot of interconnectors, investments in interconnectors between Denmark and other countries, sort of benefiting from price differences within the hour between countries, etc. And there's been tremendous amount of great investment opportunities, and we've had no problems actually agreeing that these investments were very good for society and they should be undertaken.
Thank you, Thomas. Mark?
Thank you. 100% right that the physics is still needed. This is why we don't call anymore the ones who do modeling, for example, in the digitalization IT people, we call them data scientists. So which means they need to have the background for physics and math beside the background in IT, for instance. If we look at the car, automotive industry, there is no difference anymore between industrial and digital. When you buy a car, it's all included. And the way they are organized internally, they solve it. There is no fight internally between the ones who know the mechanics and the engines and the ones who do the digital. We still have it in the industrial business, unfortunately. And I was asked a question on Malmö yesterday, what's the biggest challenge of digitalization? I said, I'm going to surprise you. It's not technology, it's not techniques, it's human resources. It's simply a transformation. Digitalization is a transformation. So when you transform, you need to hire people that come from the outside, you need to give them conditions, you need to manage the people you have here for 20 years and more than 20 years in the company. It's a human resources business. So when people say within utilities companies or industrial companies, we, them, etc., it's all wrong. That has to be completely one team working like an automotive industry where you are manufacturing cars together. And I would like to give an example. I was this morning in Sweden meeting a number of startups, initiative called Ignite. And most wow, innovative things I looked was not about pure digitalization. So there was a technology where they are recycling exhaust, warm air coming from restaurants. You've got 2 million restaurants in Europe, 3 million in the US. This is a 60, 90 billion market. And recycling that exhaust warm air that comes is a huge energy efficiency stuff. You are saving like 100 million tons, 150 million tons in the US, 100 million in Europe. So this is an example where, Windows and IT and so on cannot solve it. You need physics behind it. Now, on the smart metering side, it happens I'm the president of ESMIG, European Energy Smart Metering of Europe. I finished my term in 1 month after 4 years of being president, but I will continue to follow the objectives 2020. So we listed the use cases that where smart metering can bring value. We have 17. So there are differences between projects where you implement the minimum and projects where you implement more use cases. The value is bigger. Second, when you calculate the value of a smart metering project, there is a difference between looking at only one floor or looking at the total building of 7 floors, which is smart grids. So you've got to look at what we have put in the mandate for smart metering M441 and what was also in the mandate of smart grids M490 and say, look, this is the first step and let's look at the value of the whole thing. And this is why you see also countries, because you are referring to all business cases, countries like Sweden and Italy, who started before the others to penetrate 100% the deployment with the deployment of smart metering, they are readjusting what they have implemented first. So like they have a second version to leverage the latest technologies we have today that we did not have in the beginning of the 2000s. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all three of you. And that brings us to the end of our panel. What can we take away? I would like to start with 2 general statements that clearly came up here and I think which are also shared, at least by the large majority, I can say. The first is certainly what Maya said in his presentation, I have already commented on it, that we have to take a holistic multi-energy system approach where we take all together. And that is also what has been echoed here, that we have to make the interlinks between and giving up the silo mentality. We have to work on that first. The second general statement, and it was supported by the 3 panelists here, is whatever the technology set is, the physical constraints of the power network will always influence the pace of deployment of digital infrastructure and services and their penetration thereof. So this is also something that we have to bear in mind when we
when we talk about digitalization and digital tools. And then I think we have dropped some points here today where I think more discussion is needed, because I can already see also, we have not have the time to go deeper, that there are still possible different views on this. And that starts with the, what Mara said, we have to free up the potential of data. Yes, but then we listen to Gerrit saying data privacy, data protection. So how do we manage that? And I remember discussions that when you take the American approach, then as long as data have a value, and they, we have seen, have a big value, then everything has to be allowed. And in Europe, it's the other way around, where we take a very, very strong protectionist approach when it comes to data privacy, which might go too far and hamper developments that are needed. This is certainly one element that needs further discussion. Another is around the role of consumers. I would have liked also to go into that more. Yes, of course, all has to boil down to benefits for consumers. But what kind of benefits? Direct benefits, indirect benefits? Are there no others that can benefit from a new energy system? These kind of things, I think, is also something that should be taken up later. Then the competition and setup of the market rules, if you like. We have heard, do we need adjustments of the unbundling rules? Gerrit says no. Stefan has advocated for this. I think it is a valid question, and we have to look at it case by case. And unbundling should never be a dogma. We have to look where it makes sense and where the danger that you have described, Gerrit, are real, and where whether can we handle some problems differently with different tools than the strict unbundling rules. And then comes the smart meter. Yes, I also share this view, and we have to talk more about the future, as you rightly said, because when I see in some countries that they are so proud that they have 80% roll-off of smart meters, but they are from yesterday or the day before yesterday, it doesn't make sense, and they mainly have the purpose to switch off the customers when they don't pay the bill. This is certainly not the digital future of smart meters. And then, last but not least, interesting discussion that we have seen here, nodal pricing system. This is also something I think we should not turn a blind eye. We know that the zonal system that we are applying here comes with a lot of problems for us, and we should be open, as we should always be when we talk about digital problems, for new thoughts, new thinking, new discussions. And in this sense, I'm closing this session, and I would really like you to give a strong applause for the three fantastic panelists here. Thank you very much, and that brings me to our last agenda point for today, with when I'm sharing something, I'm speaking always over time. We have the pleasure, as Minister has already announced, that we are launching the Copenhagen School of Energy Infrastructure. We have already heard about it. It was presented, I think, last time, the idea. Now it is becoming reality. I personally believe that this is a very, very good development, and I'm looking forward also. Now I'm talking as a representative of the Commission to work with you also in the context of this forum. But Lars Peter, please give us the overview where you are, where you want to go, and welcome already to the forum.
Thank you very much. Just need a clicker for the slides, maybe?
If it works. If it works.
See if it works.
So they will
Okay, that will do it.
next slide.
Okay. On behalf of Copenhagen Business School and the very dedicated team, overseeing the establishment of the Copenhagen School of Energy Infrastructure. I'm happy to give a brief update on the development of the school. So, those of you who were last year, as mentioned, you will remember that Peter Mølgaard introduced the school and the aims of the school. And I'm happy to announce this year that now we are ready. We have the sufficient funding for establishing the school, and also we are now hiring an endowed professor who will lead the school. I will come back to that. So just as a reminder from last year's presentation, the school will give academic support to the forum. It will develop into a think tank specializing in energy infrastructure in both electricity and gas. And it will do its research and workshops and policy events in between meetings of the forum. And in particular, it will bring a long-term perspective on the efficiency and sustainability of energy infrastructure. So the establishment of the school has been made possible thanks to donations from so far 5 donors listed here. So thank you for that, and we're looking forward to dialogues and collaboration. And we are still looking for maybe 1 or 2 more donors. We think we have a good balance and coverage of donors and supporters now. However, we would like also and hope also to be able to get support from the digital tech sector and also the TSO side of energy grids. I would also like to thank the members of the founding committee, and especially Mr. Jean-Michel Glachard, for their invaluable inputs in materializing the school. And I would also like to thank the Commission, especially Klaus-Dieter Borchardt, for their strong support in this. The school will be, as mentioned, hosted by Copenhagen Business School, which is one of the leading and largest business schools in Europe. CBS has a long tradition of making research at the highest level of relevance to companies, firms, and society at large, and we're dedicated to support this initiative in the spirit of this. So it's our ambition that the professor, it will be an endowed professorship at CBS, and it is our ambition that we will be able to present him or her next year at the forum, and where he or her can also present a more detailed work program of the school. The professor will be able to set a team of postdocs and PhDs, and also collaborate with researchers as CBS and elsewhere on these themes. So now I know that the good people of the forum, they have prepared a reception soon here outside, so that we can drink a glass, and hopefully you will join me and raise a glass for the school here. So if you have any questions and would like to participate as a donor, have any inputs regarding the recruitment of the endowed professor, please do not hesitate to contact me or any other of the CBS team members who are well represented here today. So please do not hesitate to approach me at the reception. Okay. So now over to Klaus-Dieter Borchardt, who will sum up the first day of the forum.
Thank you very much, Lars-Peter. Very, very good start by inviting us for a drink. And of course, I can only support what you were saying. I think this is really something that we needed, focused institution that is doing research and helping us also in organizing events and discussion rounds. So thank you very much, and we will follow that up, and I hope over the next years we will intensify the collaboration and we are getting to a level that we already have with the Florence School of Regulation. Jean-Michel is here, so I have to say that. So that before I now close day one and let you go to the drinks, I would like to thank everybody, especially you as our audience here. Thank you very much for having joined us here in such a great number. It is really a pleasure. And I also think that the first day that we are keeping more general in an more open debate. Tomorrow, I hope that also a number of colleagues will join us in that discussions. You will see we will enter into the more practical areas, practical problems that we try to solve. But the first day, I think, is always a very good start, and we have the award ceremony. And also, I would like to congratulate those who have won the prize. And I really hope that your projects will not now go into a box with the award, but can serve as best practices. So I really hope that these projects that have been awarded should be spread, should be mentioned, should be discussed, should be presented also in other fora than the one here today. So congratulations also from my side. That is enough because the drinks otherwise will get warm. I wish you an excellent evening in sunny Copenhagen. I underline that. Those who are staying longer, it will not last. So,
that's a prediction. Machine learning.
Enjoy the evening, enjoy Copenhagen, and I hope to see most of you tomorrow back in our working sessions. Thank you very much.